Hello, everybody. Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Live at the Waterhole. We're first up, we're in Kenya at the Old Donyo Waterhole. My name is Ralph Kirsten, and what does the bush hold in store for us today? Well, you'll have to sit back, relax, and watch as the animals come down to the waterholes to quench their thirst and cool off. And as per usual, please don't forget that this is a live and interactive experience, so we'd love for you to jump on board with us and send us through your questions and your comments. You can do that by going on the WildEarth website and registering. You can also join the conversation on X, formerly known as Twitter, using the hashtag WildEarth. What is it that you'd like to see? What would you like to chat about? Whatever it is, wildlife related, send it on through. And we've had these bulls here. They've been coming through for the last few days and keeping us very entertained. So this is a lovely start. Looks like a reasonably clear day as well. Not too many clouds around, but we still can't make out Mount Kilimanjaro there in the background. Straight off behind these elephants is where it is. A little bit of wind about though. There was a couple of little incidents yesterday as well between the elephant bulls. Nothing serious, but there were some disagreements, that's for sure. And Stephen Boyd saying good morning from the UK. Welcome aboard, Stephen. Karen Sadnani saying good morning from the USA. So the international viewers are with us already. Darcy Miller saying hello, Ralph. Fantastic start with the elephants. It's always a pleasure when the elephants are around, and especially these big chaps here in Kenya. A lot of butterflies also coming in, seemingly to get a drink as well. Just a bit of a close-up on this individual. Lovely set of tusks on him. And yesterday we also had one that had quite a bad injury on its trunk. It wasn't a fresh injury, but it seemed like, very suspiciously, like it had been snared. The snare was no longer on it, but there was a little hole as well. So shame. He was recovering from that. This one seems to be fine. Highlight of yesterday was also having a southern ground hornbill at Juma, and of course all the elephant action as well. Seems like a little bit of a standoff between the two of them. So Danny asking, how bad would a trunk injury have to be for the Ellie to not survive? Danny, I I suppose it's one of those appendages. They've got those two little fingers at the end that helps them to pick small things up, especially. So it will make life more difficult for them. But I think if it was cut very short, so pretty much up by the tusks there, I think it would struggle because it really needs that trunk to grab onto branches and pull them off a tree when they want to feed, and also when they sort of grazing on grass, they twist it around it and then they kick it off with their foot. So it would make feeding rather difficult. But elephants are extremely resilient. I haven't seen one with a very short trunk. I've seen ones with the trunk cut off completely, but probably about maximum 30 centimeters or so, maybe a little bit more. And they're still able to use that, kind of in the way that if you lost your hand, you could still use your arm in certain ways to grab things, but you lose the dexterity of the fingers that you once had. So it's the same with the elephants. So they wouldn't do as well as they normally would, but they would be able to carry on after learning how to use it. I think the younger that it happens, the better for them to be able to learn. If it happens to an older elephant, as with humans, more difficult for them then to learn the new skills of using a shorter trunk. But yeah, I don't think a very short trunk would be very good, and for them to be able to survive. It would be quite tough. But I've seen stranger things, so I wouldn't put it past them. Now, while we're watching these two bulls, a lovely little article from Oxford University, and they're speaking on, this was published on the 25th of June, 2019. So they say the older you get, the harder you seek the mating secrets of Africa's bull elephants. Males of many species slow down in their pursuit of females as they age. Not so with elephants. A new study published today, so that was in 2019 in June, reveals that bull elephants increase the energy they put into reproduction as they get older. And the new research conducted by the University of Oxford, Save the Elephants, and Colorado State University compared the movements of male African savanna elephants, as another individual arrives, while they were in must, periodic state of intensive testosterone-fueled sexual activity, and when they were not. And the results reveal that as they age, male elephants move more in must and move less out of must. The combination of these two diverging factors meant that despite having similar speeds and range sizes between states at age 20, by age 50 males were traveling twice as fast in 3.5 times larger area in must compared to non-must. And the investigation, led by Dr. Lucy Taylor at the University of Oxford's Department of Zoology, used a combination of visual observation and GPS tracking data from 25 male elephants aged between 20 to 52 years old. The data was collected in the Samburu and Buffalo Springs National Reserve, northern Kenya, as part of the Save the Elephants long-term monitoring project between 2000 and 2018. Male African savanna elephants continue to increase in body mass throughout their lives, which means that older male elephants often reach twice the size of both females and young males. Ian Douglas Hamilton, founder of Save the Elephants and senior research associate at the University of Oxford's Department of Zoology, said older bulls are not only larger and more energetic in mating than younger bulls, but female elephants tend to prefer them, perhaps because their size demonstrates their survival skills over many years and seasons. The new results also suggest that male elephants are capitalizing on their increase in size by spending more effort searching for females as they get older. Given that older male elephants tend to be both the target of trophy hunting and poaching, man-made interference could disrupt the age structure, which could bring on must prematurely and lead to changes in the reproductive dynamics of elephants. Dr. Taylor said, investigating how elephants' reproductive tactics vary with age is crucial to our understanding of the behavioral ecology of the African savanna elephant, and ultimately the driving forces shaping the evolution of their life history. The fact that mature male elephants make such dramatic changes in their movement patterns when they are in must also means that we can now use GPS tracking data alone to detect when they are in fact in must. So the ability to detect must remotely can be used to study male reproductive behavior in difficult conditions across Africa, and to identify and protect important corridors for genetic transmission between different elephant populations in human-dominated landscapes. Very, very interesting indeed. So, to conclude, the key findings from the study include that unlike other species, male African elephants increase the energy they put into reproduction as they get older. Male elephants move faster and further in must as they age. 50-year-old males moved 50% faster and twice as far when in must compared to those of 35-year-olds, compared to 20-year-olds as well, who have yet to come into full must as fast and over 3 times as far. Simultaneously, the elephants move less when in non-must as they get older. The change of behavior as older elephants go into must is so clear that it can be detected remotely just by using their movement patterns rather than having to actually physically observe the elephants directly. And the male elephant behavior study can be viewed as it's published online in the Journal of Animal Ecology. So Sandy commenting, saying, great day for Live at the Waterhole. Thanks, Ralph and WildEarth. You're very welcome, Sandy. Lovely to have you on board once again. Mercedes Bean saying, looking forward to seeing all the wildlife. Absolutely. What more could we ask for than these 3 big bulls? They're showing each other a little bit of affection there. It's possible. Those two on the left. So Nathan is asking, do elephants fight a lot only when in must? And I think this is an important question, and thanks for asking it, Nathan, because very often a lot of questions from viewers and guests around must in bulls and the understanding thereof. So I think it's worth going through this properly. And article from the Tsavo Trust, and this is in Kenya as well, speaking on this exact topic, must, explaining the period of heightened sexual awareness for male elephants. Elephant societies are known to be firmly maternal, and elephant herds are maintained by a strong matriarch, and male elephants are ousted from the herd when they're teenagers. During their teenage years, male elephants must embark on a journey of self-discovery. It's well known that lone bull elephants are prone to violent and aggressive behavior. These hormonal moments of heightened sexual behavior are called must. So what is must? During must, male elephants are flooded with up to 10 times, I've heard up to 60 times, so I think this is debatable, as much testosterone as usual. Their temporal glands, located behind their ears, swell up to the size of a grapefruit, and they are noticeable due to an almost constant stream of urine that leaves a scent trail behind them. Cynthia Moss, one of the foremost experts in elephants, describes must as a kind of Jekyll and Hyde transformation. Must is a method male elephants use to demonstrate their viability as a sexual and reproductive partner. They're broadcasting their good genes and virility. So one of the darkest sides of must is the effect it has on other males. A male in must is aggressive, and this aggression can boil over into fights with other bull elephants. Testosterone-charged males occasionally cause fatal injuries to each other as well. So males experience their first period of must at around the age of 30, and it only lasts for a few days and passes quickly. However, older male elephants are known to experience must for months and months on end. So males who experience must for a long time can occasionally develop green penis syndrome. This occurs when the constant stream of urine causes a greenish film to develop on the sheath of the penis. And this film has an extremely strong smell. So how does must affect the social relationships? It's an important aspect of how males fit into wider elephant society. In terms of the male hierarchy, larger elephants usually rank higher. However, during must, a male elephant gets a boost to his position in the pecking order. A smaller male in must can sometimes be seen out-muscling a larger male. Now, when male elephants are teenagers, they're usually chased away from their herds by the matriarch. It was previously thought that these males wandered in isolation, occasionally joining with other males until the period of must where they sought out female elephants. It's now believed that male elephants regularly join other matriarchal herds, and here they meet other elephant families and learn about must from older bull elephants. The immediate social relationships of a male elephant are directly related to their periods of must. When in must, male elephants are frequently found along or with other males. And when in must, they are generally found with other females as well, or in a herd. So I think to answer the question, it's generally, we can generalize, it's generally when they are aggressive towards each other. It's generally because they're in must, but it can be sort of a younger bull challenging an older one, regardless of whether they're in must or not. So it can occur, but mostly they're aggressive towards each other when they come into that higher state of hormonal imbalance with all the extra testosterone. So, yeah, I would say most of the time because of most, but sometimes it can happen when they aren't. So I think you could also equate that this bull on the right here, he's got much bigger tusks. He seems to be bigger than the other two, and it's almost like they're ganging together to feel a little bit better about being in his presence. I think that might be why they're being a bit affectionate towards each other. Safety in numbers. Maybe they just feel a little bit intimidated by him. So it seems it is a rather warm winter's day here in Kenya. It's rather tropical, so close to the equator. It doesn't really have much of a winter. And you can see how the elephants are, really getting themselves nicely wet and cooling off. This big boy is having a bit of a strange scratch. But he's got himself nicely wet and full of mud. Looks like he might be leaving the waterhole to the youngsters now. Now, Andy commenting that elephants must be the most intelligent creatures ever. I must admit, Andy, I do agree with you. However, we've just seen the evidence of one of the shortcomings that I do find with elephants. I've seen them doing that a lot. Um, and in some waterholes, you see them standing, defecating, and urinating whilst drinking at the same time in the water. And I think that's probably one of the only little things that I think that isn't so clever from them. But it doesn't seem to bother them, so maybe that's why they don't care. Maybe it's a waste of time to walk out of the water because it just doesn't make a difference for them anyway. They don't seem to get sick from it, so who cares? But absolutely, I think in everything that they do, they're so in tune with the environment and everything around them. Nothing's a rush. Everything is calculated. It's just fascinating to watch. And Sanjeev Roy saying we're all waiting for 1 ton to turn up majestically. Absolutely, that would be fantastic. Always makes my day when I can see 1 ton. He is a beast. Another one coming in. It's not the same one. He's dry and he doesn't have his big tusks. So a little bit more similar sized to these other two. A little bit of greeting going on. So Eddie asking a very good question. Which other animals get kicked out of the herd? And why does this happen? So Eddie, I would say that it's a natural protective behavior that literally enables or disables the potential for the male for inbreeding. So the younger bulls, if they were allowed to, continue on with their antics of becoming boisterous and seemingly starting to want to reproduce and mate with the females, if it was allowed to remain within the herd, it would be mating then with its family, because those maternal herds are pretty much all from the same mother. There's a big amount of that. There's aunties and all part of that. Different males, yes, but very often the same mother. So because of this, if those bulls are driven out, then they start to wander. And the bigger bulls also get aggressive towards them if they come towards the herd and start becoming boisterous or trying to become dominant, and they get pushed out by them as well. So this limits the amount of chance of inbreeding and mating with their sisters or their mother or anything like that. And it's a very similar protective behavior that occurs with a lot of the animals, lions included. Once those males get to a particular age, they get chased out or they will be killed. And it's once they start getting towards maturity and they start getting more testosterone, etc., that the males will then drive them out or kill them. And so that then once again limits the chances of them being able to mate with their mothers or their sisters. So I think very much, an evolved behavior to stop that kind of inbreeding. And it happens with a lot of different species. and in so doing limits that. It obviously also keeps the genetic diversity and the gene pool very strong. If they are made to disperse, and they do, and then spreading their genes as far away as possible is probably the best. So it doesn't seem too aggressive between these two, but even from a young age, they partake in a lot of wrestling and pushing and shoving. Very often in play, I think they enjoy doing it, but then it sort of creates that muscle memory for when it's really required. It's just, play is a very important part of learning different behaviors and getting that strength and muscle ability for when it's actually needed. Okay, what a wonderful start it's been here in Old Donyo at Kenya. But I think it's time to change of place, and we're going to go back to South Africa, and this time to Madikwe Game Reserve and Tau. With a lovely mix of game, lots of zebra there. There's impala off on the right, and a lot of blue wildebeest off on the left as well. Doesn't seem to be much wind at all in these parts. A lovely mirror effect of the zebra on the water there. And you can hear the Natal spurfowl making a racket. Some youngsters there within the group. You'll see them, they're taking a chance going in the water, although it is quite shallow, so not much chance of the crocodiles being able to sneak up on them. But they do know that they're there and the danger that lurks within. Quite an awkward spot to get down to the water, especially if you're walking with clogs on, like these zebra are with their hooves. becomes very slippery on these flat surfaces. As always, we can hear the little blue wax balls and the odd tin spot batis as well in the background. Must be close here to the camera. I think there's some little bushes and thickets there. You see the little common moorhen in the water. Getting a little bit stuck there in the mud, but it's out. So Wayne was asking, how do zebras differentiate between their groups? Well, Wayne, it's it's always a stallion that's going to have his group of females, normally between 5 and 10 or so. I think on average it's mostly between 6 and 8 females. And any more than that, and he'll struggle to keep them, and other males steal them from that stallion. So it's all down to each other's, their stripe patterns, their smell, and their particular sounds. We might think that they all look almost identical, and how do they tell between us? But they'd probably say the same for us as humans. So I think it's within the species, within their groups, they can definitely tell the individuals apart. And much is about the smell of each other. A lot of the animals use this as their primary scent, most of them. And you see a lovely male ostrich as well. And so it's when they urinate mostly that they pick up exactly who it is and where they are within their sort of monthly cycles and so on. So I would say it's mostly down to that, but going further with their stripe patterns and their sounds, I think it's probably quite easy for them to know exactly who's who in the African zoo. Yes, the ostrich. Like I like to refer to them as Jurassic chickens. Right, so lovely stop in here at Tau as always, but let's change of place, and this time we go to the Greater Kruger Park and Nkoro. With some more elephants. Wonderful. You get a nice perspective of them here. Different to Old Dornio, obviously slightly looking down on them, but still quite close. So it's nice to get all of these different angles from all the different water holes. So, and also some news from South Africa is that we've just recently had our general elections, and South Africans have voted for change. So there will be a coalition government of sorts. We don't know quite yet as how that will be formulated, but change is in the air, and that goes with all the ministries that the government is in charge of, and obviously the environment, very close to our hearts. Would be changing as well potentially. So we just hope that it's going to be a change for the better. With that in mind, there was a bit of an alarming article that I read on Daily Maverick, and it was written by John Yeld. Speaking of, experts have been alarmed by the government's move to drop statutory requirements for some developments in the Kruger National Park. Um, and a government proposal to exclude South African national parks from having to get environmental authorization for some developments in the Kruger Park has slipped in almost unnoticed. And I think this is important for us to know about, because when these kind of regulations change, sometimes it can have disastrous effects. Just 5 responses were received to this proposal that was gazetted by Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment Minister Barbara Creasy in mid-February, with a public comment period of 40 days. But one of those who did respond was a Cape Town lawyer specializing in environmental heritage and planning law. And the other day we were speaking of somebody that was studying law, and we were hoping that they were going to go into environmental law and maybe could get involved with things such as this. But this particular lawyer was Richard Summers. In a comprehensive 10-page comment, he argues the proposed changes will allow South African national parks, or SAN parks, to decide on and implement developments without appropriate checks and balances. And this is in direct contravention of the basic tenets of administrative justice as supported by South African courts, he writes in his submission. And Summers also points out that protected areas such as national parks are held in trust by the authorities for the benefit of present and future generations, and argues the proposed change will prevent interested and affected parties and stakeholders from participating meaningfully in decisions regarding activities in the Kruger National Park. This is at odds with the importance placed on public participation spelt out in Section 33 of the Constitution of South Africa, he notes, and insists any measure that erodes civil society's ability to meaningfully participate must be rejected. And his submission was supported by Professors Rhys Alberts and Francois Retief, both of the Protected Areas Research Group at Northwest University. The exclusions, environmental impact assessments, or the EIAs, lie at the heart of South Africa's environmental management regime, coded in legislation under the umbrella National Environmental Management Act. Now, full environmental impact assessments are usually required before authorities such as the DFFE can give or refuse approval to developments or listed activities. But NEMA does allow for identified activities to be excluded from the requirement of environmental authorization in certain circumstances, ostensibly to streamline the EIA process, promote efficiency in the system, and reduce costs. So such exclusions can apply to geographical areas or to activities within existing environmental management regimes that have been identified and formally adopted as environmental management instruments. So I think, then they get into a lot of the intricacies of the passing through of this legislation that has slipped through without much public participation. And whenever that happens, you have to start to think that there's nefarious agendas at play. So I don't think that this is passed completely, and hopefully if we do get a new minister, this will change for the better, because we need those checks and balances. If there's going to be new developments going on within the park, environmental impact assessments need to be done and considered before any of those developments take place. But if they exclude them, I think it's a slippery slope for South African management of the environmental areas if we're just going to develop unchecked. And for me, it would just be then money-making exercises with little regard for the environment. So I think it's important for all of us to be aware of these kind of things and take note and participate when we can, comment and get involved, make our voices heard. So Questo TV was asking, hi, what if an elephant that they don't know shows up? Well, Questo, they'll meet and greet. Just like if you are at a braai, like we call it in South Africa, a barbecue on a lovely summer's day, at a friend's house, and they've invited somebody around that you don't know, well, you greet them and you introduce yourself, and you take it from there. Sometimes there can be a little bit of aggression towards each other if there's posturing and so on. It all depends on the age of the animal and the dynamics of the group that it's with. If it's on its own, well, it needs to be, if it's a smaller animal, so if it's a younger bull, like in this particular instance you might see here, if it's arriving where there's bigger bulls around, it needs to be submissive, and it needs to not be aggressive towards them. And then they will probably accept its presence and not have any problems with it, and maybe even enjoy its company. But if it postures and shows aggression, well, it's going to have and get what it's looking for. It depends on all of those different factors. But it's all dynamic, just like us as humans. All right, so lovely stop in here with these Ellie Bulls at Juma, at Nkoro, but we are going to change and we're going to head to Juma. We had a big herd of buffalo here yesterday, and I'm wondering if it's the same one. Lovely. If they're sticking around, well, it could also mean that we might see some lions soon. I'm not quite sure what the naturalists would have seen out and about, but with these guys here, you can pretty much be sure there's not too much distance between them and a pride of lions. Some yellow-billed oxpeckers on their backs as well. I love seeing them and hearing them. Tiny little calves. Also lovely to see. So I just got news from Kulu, the director, that we had lions and buffalo on drive this morning. So perhaps this afternoon they will be hunting. Well, never nice to see an animal die, but always wonderful to witness the power of lions in this sort of fight for survival between the likes of buffalo and themselves. It's just incredible. And one of the reasons why I just am hooked on watching wildlife. So Susie C was saying, thank you, Ralph, for the information about the South African government proposal about the sort of excluding the environmental impact assessments or the balance and checks in the national parks, because it is definitely disquieting, disconcerting, and we need more people to be concerned about it and to comment and get involved in these kind of environmental issues, especially when we have them affecting our natural heritage and our national parks. And of course, I don't get involved in politics, especially when we're watching a wildlife show. But all we can hope for in South Africa, with the changes that are on the horizon, is that we actually get experts in the field in charge of the different ministries. Because I think a failing government has been shown because the electorate has rejected them. And I think this is in a big part as to why. Because we don't have expert environmentalists running that ministry, and it's all political appointments. So I think if we could just change that and get environmental experts to be in charge of the environment, I think it would go a long way to making the right decisions. So the buffalo, of course, will always be on the lookout and, always concerned about if there are any lions around. And if there's any little smell of it, there will be an immediate change in the mood of the group, and they will go into formation, maybe with the big bulls out in the front, almost in a lager, and then sort of circling and keeping inside in the middle the youngsters and the females, and then in so doing also having a battle front for attacking the lions and defending themselves. I've actually shown this to a couple of students on a couple of occasions. You don't want to change the natural behavior of animals, but especially in that learning experience, I think it's to experience it firsthand. I think goes a long way when you are learning about wildlife. And with some different groups, I would take them out, and when there was a big herd of buffalo and they relatively close to the vehicle, no problem with us, everybody relaxed and calm. And I would just exhibit to the group that I would just slowly get out of the vehicle and take a couple of steps away from it. And immediately they would then recognize me as a human, not as a big, smelly, green animal, as the vehicle. Um, and they would go into formation just as they would if there were lions around. And it was incredible how quickly the mood changed and how quickly everybody jumped into action. And that aggressive response was fascinating to watch, and obviously very informative for the students to see that in action. And then obviously getting back into the vehicle. And then you can almost see the confusion of them. It's like I've disappeared into this big animal. And because then there's suddenly no human there. But it does take a bit of time for them to calm down and then almost resume their natural behavior once more. So Mercedes Bean saying the size of this herd. I'm not sure how many there are, but I think it could be going into three digits, over 100, maybe. It'd be difficult to count, but I think definitely upwards of 50, and I even think over 100 of them. Still more dotted in the bush in the background as well, so I think there could be even as much as double the size of this group here at the water. So Paul was asking, do different buffalo herds fight? Paul, buffalo aren't territorial, and I'm pretty sure that if buffalo herds meet up, they may even join each other or just split up. But I don't, you sometimes do have fighting, between bulls, and it's all about mating rights. So you could have potentially a bit of aggression and maybe a bit of a clash, but it's not you know, anything about territory, just about the females. So, if the bulls arriving with a different herd would be aggressively wanting to mate with the females, potentially there would be conflict. But I more so see it that they would join up. This could even be an amalgamation of a lot of smaller herds because they're only as good as the sum of their parts. And the bigger the herd, the less chance the individual has of being eaten, as well as the better their defense would be against lions as well. So I think the advantages far outweigh the disadvantages of them joining up. So I would say that they would probably do so, unless there was a real fight for the females. Now, with that in mind, a little article by Wild Wings Safaris speaking about 6 reasons why buffalo may be the snarkiest beasts on the planet. Buffalo are big animals that belong to the Bovidae family. And there's only 2 types, the African or Cape buffalo and the Asian water buffalo. Don't get them confused. And although buffalo are sometimes confused with the American bison, they are a different genus altogether. They're big and they're strong. A buffalo is big, really big. Fully grown, it can be between 1.8 to 3.4 meters long, which is 6 to 11 feet, and 1 to 1.7 meters tall, which is almost 6 feet as well, and weigh between 300 to 860 kilograms. It's got a massive head and boss, or horns, as we see there, a broad chest and sturdy legs, and it's said to be 4 times stronger than an ox. They're dark, moody, and tough. Buffalo have a thick hide covered in brown to black hair, which makes them easily camouflage, especially in poor light and the shady areas where they like to hang out. Its neck hide is particularly tough and thick to protect it from scuffles with other buffalo, like when they're fighting for dominance, but unfortunately not quite thick enough to protect them from lions' teeth. They can take company or leave it. Buffalo can exist in herds of literally thousands, or cozy herds of just a dozen or so females, calves, and a male or two. Often the old, bad-tempered males leave the herd and hang around in small groups and wallow in the mud. These grumpy guys are commonly known as dugger boys. A lone buffalo is easy prey for lions or even an opportunistic group of hyena. But they're pretty adaptable, although you'll never find them too far from water. They're happy on the open veldt, woodlands, forest, and riverine forests. They're strong swimmers and can easily cross rivers in search of better grazing. They drink about 40 liters of water a day. They're fiercely protective. Buffalo are no slouch when it comes to facing off against danger. They'll form a circle around their young, old, and weak members, bravely fighting off predators, mainly lions. There's footage of buffalo tossing lion into the air with well-placed tosses of its head The strong horns can rip open a thick hide with ease. And they've even been known to chase lions up trees. They never forget a wrong. Next to the elephant, the African buffalo is renowned for exceptional memory. They're known to ambush and attack hunters that have wounded or injured them, even years later. They kill more hunters in Africa than any other animal. That's hunters, not people in general. And they've also been known to kill lion cubs from prides that have attacked and killed members of their herd in the past. I think that they'll pretty much kill any predator they can and that they come across, just to eliminate the threat. So Sanjeev Roy was saying, I'm a big buffalo fan. They're the only animal who can toss up big male lions like ping pong balls. Yeah, and that's it. We were chatting about it yesterday. Sometimes the tables do turn, and I think we were speaking on the sort of idea of revenge. And I think it's one of those animals that definitely does partake in seeking revenge. I've also seen it with elephants. They do it too. But is it that? It's difficult to marry the two up if it is actually that emotion. But I'm pretty sure it is. So just some more quick facts on the African or Cape buffalo. The Latin name is Cincerus sapha with a C, and they have poor eyesight and hearing, but they have an excellent sense of smell. March to May is generally their mating season. Gestation is about 9 to 11 months, and it ends in a single calf. Twins are extremely rare, but possible. Buffalo are excellent mothers with an exceptionally strong bond with their young. The calf suckles for about a year and is totally dependent on its mother during this time. So in their natural habitat, an African buffalo lives for an average of about 20 years. They're herbivores and enjoy grass and herbs, but will eat shrubs and trees as well if there's no other food available. And their dung is identical to cattle. You cannot tell the difference. It's I refer to them as dung patties because of all the water that they drink. It's a slop, very much like cattle, and well, exactly the same. In fact. All right, so always lovely to see a big herd like this, but they're slowly moving off. I think we'll do the same, but we'll keep an eye on it. For now, let's go back to Old Donyo. Lots more zebra have made their way in, seemingly pushing the elephants out. But I think the signal just isn't strong enough there for now at Old Donyo, so we've returned on back to Djuma. And Bill was saying, okay, guys, please don't drink all the water in the dam. Yeah, there is a lot of them, and we could probably almost see the level dropping as they've all been drinking. Bill? So Rebecca Bishop was saying that the dam actually looks a lot lower than it did even yesterday. Yeah, it might be drying up that quickly. It's, I think exponentially as it does dry, it picks up speed almost as it's getting more shallow. So both from evaporation and the elephants coming in to drink, and big herds of buffalo like this, there'll definitely be a few hundred liters at least that have been taken out by them drinking here. Could even go into the thousands. Okay, we are going to change again, and this time, though, we're not going to Ordonio, we're going to go back to Tau. With a lovely breeding herd of Ellies. Nice little tiny baby there, and some youngsters, looking like they're being a bit playful, throwing the dust around as well. Getting a good old scratch on that termite mound. And the little youngster having a roll around now as well. Maybe he's going to go for a little sleep. How cute is that little one? Full of beans. He's laid down again now. All right, we're going to change of place now because we're going to go for something completely different. We're going to go down to the Eastern Cape and Founders Lodge. With a couple of white rhino. Fantastic. But as you can see nice and close now, the notches in the ear that are used to identify individuals, then each having a particular formula equaling a specific number. And each individual will have that. And then of course for telemetry and being able to track them, you can't put anything around the neck. So with rhino, they do it around the ankles and give them a bracelet, as you see there. For me, they really look like massive armadillos. They do really look prehistoric. Hear the communication between them. This is most likely a mother and calf. Now, what's quite interesting about white rhino is that their story dates back 50 million years. And the ancestors emerged shortly after the dinosaurs and long before mankind. And prehistoric rhinos also walked the earth long before elephants, meaning they were once the largest land mammals on the planet. It was wonderful to see these rhinos in the Albany thicket down in the Eastern Cape. Very different. You don't get many big trees here at all. Mainly just these small bush thicket areas. Now Leo was asking, do you think rhinos have a sense of awareness that they are in danger of being poached? If yes, has this made them more skittish? Leo, if they've been anywhere near, even when they are darted by vets and so on, for any kind of procedures, for collars or for dehorning or whatever, they do become skittish, and it's a period of time before they do relax. I don't think that they have a sense of being poached, but they sort of react towards their experiences. So for instance, Tandi, who's the very famous rhino on the Kariga Game Reserve, who was actually poached, she was darted with very strong drugs, and they cut off her horn, and then they found her in the morning, and the vet was William Folds was actually able to save her and amputate over the area where the horn was taken. And she remained very skittish for a long period, as you can imagine, after that. and she also became quite aggressive. But slowly but surely, she calmed down, and now she's very relaxed around the vehicle. I've had her around my vehicle on numerous occasions, and she's very calm. Um, but it's whenever those procedures are done, then again, and she'll then, it can take up to a month or two for her to calm down after that. So once she calms down, then they almost become like cattle again. They're very relaxed. Our white rhino, very different with the black rhino, but with the white, very often out in the open, grazing, and not aggressive at all. But you can have some bulls that do get aggressive. I've been charged by a few of them, but in general, a white rhino are very lethargic and not very aggressive at all. Okay, so the rhinos have moved off, and we'll keep an eye on this spot, and if any more come, I'm sure we'll pop on back. But in the meantime, let's change of place completely. Let's go to Zimbabwe and Victoria Falls. A nice mix of animals. We've got some of the raptors, we've got kudu, we've got warthogs. It's like a marabou stork, hooded vultures. There's a few marabou storks there. Now, there was a couple of questions surrounding the rhinos, so I'll just carry on with that. Lady Macbeth was asking, is it true that rhinos ignore most things? They may have poor eyesight, but they have excellent senses of smell and hearing. They defer only to elephants, however. Lady Macbeth, yes, they do have poor eyesight, and they do ignore most things, but they are very easily frightened, because if you walk into the wind, you can obviously get very close to them, and with that bad eyesight, they suddenly see this object. I think it's quite obscure the way that they see. And suddenly they get a fright. I've witnessed this many times, even when they're just lying, wallowing in the mud, and an animal comes up to drink water near to them, they get an almighty fright. So they do ignore most things, but there are those times when within close proximity, that they do react. But definitely their sense of smell is their ultimate sense, as with, I would say, predominantly most of the animals. But their eyesight is just particularly bad. So I think it just takes that away from them, that they can't really see things coming from a distance. I witnessed a white rhino mother and calf. It was at Origstad, which is near to Leidenburg and Pilgrim's Rest. We used to often stop over there when we were returning from the Gauteng or Johannesburg area, to go back to work in the Lowveld. And we witnessed a mother and calf from a sort of a raised view. We were looking down on a picnic area, and there were bricked braais or barbecues. And the mother was walking and left the youngster grazing, and suddenly had realized that the mother wasn't there anymore, and sort of ran to catch up with her. But she was walking in between these braais, grazing as she was going. But he ran straight towards her and straight into one of these bricked braais. It's big. And the entire braai literally collapsed from this collision, and it almost just stepped. I thought it was going to be injured, I thought jeepers, because it was a big noise and it was a big collision. And it literally stood back, shook its head, and ran off back to mum. And I checked with the binos, there was no wounds or anything. And so it just shows that, I think, with their massive size, the thickness of their skin and bones, I think they could pretty much run trees over as well. Definitely run a braai over anyway. And it was only a youngster as well. And then Suli was asking, are those ear notches unique to all white rhino or just for this reserve? Suli, they would be part of a national database, so it's for all rhino, and that would be then included in that database, and that formula that adds up to a particular number. There won't be any two rhino the same, regardless of reserve. So that, of course, being a kudu female. Nice to see them up close. And back to our undertakers, the marabou storks. So you see this warthog here. You'll be able to sex it just by looking at the warts. There's two sets of warts on the side of the face. That's obviously without checking the little apricots at the back end, but that would indicate that it's a male. If it only had one set of warts on either side of the face, then it would be a female. So there you see the one below the eye, and then the other one further down above the tusk. We only have two species inside the Suidae family. That's the warthog and the bush pig. Bush pig more nocturnal, and so you pretty much don't see them during the day. It's very rare. Sometimes do, normally on a winter's morning, and they've been out a little bit later than usual, but generally spot them at night, and very often in little family groups as well. A lot more hairy. They are a lot bigger than the warthog, but they don't quite have the same tusks as well. Bush pigs are more like trufflers as well. When you walk through an area where bush pigs are present, you very often come across an area that looks like it's been dug with a fork, almost to turn the soil over for planting of whatever you have, a vegetable garden. When you turn the soil over with your fork, that's what it looks like where bush pigs have been foraging. They're digging up all the little roots and even grubs and whatever else is but mainly below the surface of the soil, whereas the warthogs are just more so generally grazers, like you're seeing them do here. But both of them are in fact omnivorous, but I would say that the bush pig is more so, and the warthog more so leans more on the herbivorous side. So Dana was asking, do birds of prey do most of the cleaning up, or are there other species involved in this duty? Dana, they're an important part of it, but obviously any kind of meat that is out there in the bush will be eaten by any of the carnivores. So even the likes of warthogs can feed on carcasses, but you've got mainly the likes of jackals and hyenas that will do a big part of that, and probably even more so than vultures. Um, Once they come into an area, they'll even crunch down on the bones and all of that as well. But even the likes of leopards and lions will, scavenge. Um, we like to think of them as these very clean hunters, and they don't scavenge at all, but that's not the case. They're opportunistic, and it also depends on if how hungry they are as to what, in fact, they will eat. I think they prefer fresh meat, but they'll take what they can get, especially when it's required. So Marge was asking, is the use of drones on reserves prohibited because reserves want to protect the species that are under threat on the property? That's definitely one of the reasons, Marge, especially if there are species such as rhino on the property. But another thing is that it really takes away from the experience of other guests. Um, you know, I was about in Namibia, out on safaris, when the sort of drone trend started to hit. And a lot of tourists were coming over with drones. There were no regulations for it, so there were a lot of people putting drones up. And you're trying to have a sundowner, and there's a drone flying around, and it sounds like a swarm of bees. Um, and so it was just getting out of hand. And so I think that's a big part of it as well. You're trying to take photographs, and you've got drones flying around. It just really detracts from the experience as a whole. So, a lot of places now, it's just no drone zones unless you get special permission and you get a permit or it's for something in specific. Not everybody can just, if one person's allowed to do it, well, then everybody can, and then, it just becomes a mess. And almost every second person's got a drone now. So, yeah, it just detracts from that real bush experience. It's a little bit similar to cell phones going off all the time as well. And so I know even lodges now that have said no cell phones allowed, or they must be on silent, because you've got Nokia ringtones going off while people are trying to watch the wildlife and so on. So just detracting from that experience. And I think it's important to keep that as natural as possible. And I think there's even a further aspect is that you can disturb the wildlife as well. Chasing animals around, they get confused by it, they get scared by it. So it further detracts from the wilderness experience, having drones flying around. My goodness, that marabou stork's got a wattle on him. I think it's more of a gular flap. But this female is looking a little bit ragged. She only got half her ear, I think. Wonder what's happened there. That's a young bull kudu. He's still got a way to go before he's fully mature. It's generally what happens when a male approaches a female and it smells at her back end. You very often then see them defecating and urinating. She's not even stopping to allow him to have a smell now, but it's normally as then she starts urinating, and then he will lick that urine and flex do the flim and grimace and work out exactly where she is in her cycle and how much estrogen she has. The number of animals moving through there in the background. Yeah, it's over there. Lots of impala, looks like. Okay, so nice stop in here at Vic Falls, but we're going to change of place and let's see if it holds this time, but let's go to Old Donyo.
No, like elephant coming to your room, I would show you when we get that way. I'll show you something. Just monkey and maybe yes, and the back. Black night, because of the light. Spider, yes.
A Maasai giraffe off in the background there as well. I see a big pair of tusks here on the right. Could this be 1 ton that's just arrived? No, this doesn't look like 1 ton, but it does look like 1 tusk. He has in fact only got 1. It is huge though. I wonder how big his other one was.
coming back? Not yet. 25. You see dog status keeping away all the ticks from breed. So dog status are very naturalistic. They don't go to anything. And elephants eat fish, but they don't eat under the ear. So when they dog status go under the ear, elephants will eat fish and kill them. So dog status don't go to them. That's why they don't like it. This is my friend. This small. Yes. They can even wait 5 hours. Towards you. Always towards you.
Don't feel the elephant breathe when they
That's when they move. They finish fast drinking, then they, like that, take water, like drawing water into their body, then dominate around and then move down.
and the lion is possible to feel
During the day.
the lion.
During the day or at night. At night, yes, lions come.
So Marge was asking, have you noticed that elephants don't appreciate certain smells? How do they react to the smell of carcasses? Marge, I haven't seen a major sort of reaction to the smell of carcasses from elephants. I think they definitely smell it. They smell it very strongly because their sense of smell is more than 5 times stronger than ours, double that of the dogs, even the strongest smell on a dog being the bloodhound. So I'm pretty sure that they do get it. But as I say, but what I can tell you for sure is that they do react to different smells quite obviously. And I've sort of, or I will use the example of pepper spray. I've turned many elephant young bulls that have charged at me just by spraying a line of it on the ground and backing up from there. And as it reached that line, it turned around and charged off, literally pushing trees over as it went. And we've also done many projects, and they continue on with planting chilies around vegetable gardens where there is potential for elephant-human conflict, and the elephants won't go near it. And they grow, particularly the little bird's eye chili, the very strong ones. The elephants won't go anywhere near that. So yeah, their smell is particularly strong. They say one of the strongest, if not the strongest, in the animal world. And it's just incredible. But yeah, I haven't seen them react to certain things in the bush, natural things in the bush, in that way. But we do know that they also use their sense of smell to find different plants that they prefer at different times of the year, as well as plants that are medicinal. If they've got any ailments or they have got injuries, etc., they do seek out and eat plants and trees that will assist in the healing process of whatever problem that they have. So much to do about their smell. I think they're pretty much led by their noses.
No, when I, whatever you find in the
So Miss M was saying I would get so annoyed with the flies if I was an Ellie, and I already do, and I'm not even out in the bush. Yeah, absolutely, Miss M. But I think they get used to it. I don't know. I can't get used to it. Particularly when I'm out in the desert and you get the mopani flies that literally surround your head. They crawl up your eyes, into your eyes, up your nose, into your mouth, in your ears. It's just crazy. And they literally can almost drive you nuts. It's for me, it's terrible. Shame, he really looks off balance now with only one tusk. And generally, when elephants do lose tusks, it's normally because of fighting with other bulls, and they snap them off. It's pretty much like getting your teeth knocked out. And that's exactly what it is. And so it does hurt a lot, dependent on how far it breaks off. So even though he seems bigger than this other individual, he's being a little bit subordinate in his body language towards him. Maybe it's as a result of his bloodied mouth. But I'm not sure how fresh this is or when it happened. I'm just trying to see if that's swelling around his mouth or if it's still a part of the tusk that remains. Because as I say, it all depends on how deep inside that it actually broke off. Here comes a photo bomber in the Warthog. He's also got a couple of hitchhikers. We often see these bulls spending quite a bit of time at this waterhole, just milling about, taking their time, almost just enjoying being at the water. And I think also just a meeting point for them to discuss what's been going on, what's their thoughts or whatever it might be. I think it is quite a social thing for them as well. But I'm hoping we will see some breeding herds come through here at some stage too. Just as we slowly head towards the end of the show, I'm just going to give you a couple of elephant quotes while we're watching these guys. Here's one from Lyle Watson saying, if elephants didn't exist, you couldn't invent one. They belong to a small group of living things so unlikely, they challenge credulity and common sense. And Graydon Carter saying, we admire elephants in part because they demonstrate what we consider the finest human traits: empathy, self-awareness, and social intelligence. But the way we treat them puts on display the very worst of human behavior. Peter Matthiessen, of all African mammals, the elephant is the most difficult for man to live with. Yet its passing, if this must come, seems the most tragic of all. I can watch elephants and elephants alone for hours at a time. For sooner or later, the elephant will do something very strange, such as mow grass with its toenails or draw the tusks from the rotted carcass of another elephant and carry them off into the bush. There is mystery behind that masked grey visage and ancient life force, delicate and mighty, awesome and enchanted, commanding the silence ordinarily reserved for mountain peaks, great fires, and the sea. So, we're heading towards the end of the show. I hope you've all enjoyed it, and we'll see you again back here tomorrow. Same time, same place. I will be here. I hope you enjoy the sunset safari and the naturalists out there trying to find what's going on with those buffalo and if there's any lions following them. Maybe even get a hunt. But that's it from me for now, folks. Bush greetings. Give it horns. Cheers.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the show where we look at the best highlights from about the last 24 hours or so. This is On Safari. Well, as I said, we're going to be looking at some highlight clips throughout the course of the show today. But before I carry on, my name is Amy, and behind the camera with me is, of course, Panda. There we go. And We've had an amazing day today, everyone. For those of you who were with us on the sunrise safari, it's been an exciting morning, and it looks as though things are still quite exciting around Gowrie Dam, with the live feed coming from our dam cam at the moment. So I'm sure soon enough Trish and Paul will also be out there. We'll chat to them a little bit later as well, but for now we are going to get started and look at some of the highlights. Before I carry on, it is a live and interactive show, so please do send through any comments and questions that you may have, and you can do that on the WildEarth app on the website, whether you'd like to join the conversation on X using the hashtag WildEarth, or you can pop them into the YouTube chat stream using @FC. Alrighty, let's get started. Now today, it's a little bit of a theme running through all our clips. Lots and lots of lions, as well as some rhinos. So I'm excited. Please enjoy with us. Let's get started on the first clip with some lions from Amakhala.
Success indeed. I will apologize. It is a little bit dark here. They are sitting in the shade, but they are sitting in the shade of a bush that's in between us and the sun at the moment. So it's quite bright, and in the shade it's going to be very, very dark. But nonetheless, we found our 4 females here. Oh my goodness. She's eating something. I know. I was told they made a warthog kill this morning. We heard over the radio when we were with the elephants. And I'm assuming they're just finishing this off. Everybody seems to have fairly biggish bellies. Haven't seen her belly. They're all feeding. Well, she's feeding. Sounds like she's just kind of chewing on a bone like a dog almost. Something small. I saw it earlier. She lifted it up. I'm not exactly too sure where the rest of the carcass of this warthog is, because I don't know where the kill was made. I'm assuming it was made somewhere around here. And they did say something about a adult female warthog, so it can be any size really. Nothing too big. And if they want to eat a big warthog, they gotta really go for the balls. We got huge male warthogs on this property, and we have fairly big female warthogs as well, and those are the ones you don't want to mess with. Those are the ones, if they have piglets, they'll come after you. Yay indeed. They're having a nice Sunday afternoon nap. So there's 2 in the frame there, and then from the last kind of little location, there were 2 lying with their bellies facing us, which is quite nice.
Well, there you go. Some lions munching away at Amakhala with Eric. How cool was that sighting? Awesome to see them doing their thing there. And also sounds like I don't want to mess with the warthogs at Amakhala. They sound pretty dangerous, I must say. I'm not going to go walking there. I'll need a rifle to walk with the warthogs at Amakhala. But speaking of warthog kills, I've seen once 3 young male lions on Ngala, the white male, his brother, and a younger male. They had sort of split off from the pride, and they hunted and killed a warthog successfully. It was a warthog kill. I'm glad for you viewers at home that you didn't see that live. And so because, and I say that because when warthogs are hunted and killed, they squeal, and it just sounds like they are really suffering. So I've seen that once before, and although we often do want to see the action, sometimes it is a little bit intense and can be quite gruesome and raw and very, very uncomfortable to see. There was a question about why is there a misconception around lionesses doing all the hunting, and not that the males don't. Is that correct, Tadiwa? I think so. And it is true. There is a common misconception around that the lionesses sort of do a lot more work than the males. And I mean, we saw this morning, and that's actually going to be the next clip that we're going to watch a little bit later on. The males are very much capable of hunting and taking down animals. Usually, though, when we see prides of lions on kills, for example, the females have killed it, and that's sometimes because the males who are dominant over that pride are in a coalition and are away from the pride at the time of the kill, I think. So often we see the lionesses who are sort of leading the pride as such, really lead the hunt and take control of it, and make the kill. And then sometimes the territorial males will actually just come in afterwards and feed on them. But it's a trade-off. And sometimes they get an easy meal, but then they are also defending the territory and looking after the pride. So even though it may sometimes come across like the females are doing all the work, the males are actually doing a lot of work as well. Maybe just what we don't see always. But having said that, male lions are definitely capable of hunting. They are fierce, and sometimes they actually need the strength of the male lion to take down some really big prey species. So that is what it is. Well, it really has been a lion day today. Oh my goodness. I think Panda and I couldn't believe what was happening earlier. And that was a really cool dynamic, speaking of prides and territorial males. And it was my first time meeting those big male lions, barring one of them and their sister. And to see that dynamic actually is very interesting for me. To see basically 4 males who are in their prime. They have, their manes are growing, I would say they're upwards of 7 years at least. And then their sister, who's still hanging out with them, she's not still part of whatever